Iraq War veteran Don Bramer. Don, this enemy does not sound defeated. How concerned should we be about these new threats?
Well, I think these threats are very real, and if you look back, the Taliban is not a party that wants to negotiate. They've proven more than once that they can't be trusted by their word, and we should appreciate that that danger is still there as much today as it was 18 years ago.
Don, this is Gary Kaltbaum, and thank you for your service. The one thing that just stood out for me in the last few days, I printed out a page today, condemned acts and crimes of the Taliban. I was able to print out like 20 different pages, yet we were going to bring them to Camp David. And I'm just thinking to myself, who is advising the president on this? Where do you come off on that? Because I got to tell you, this just tastes so bad knowing they were involved in 9/11, and we're a few days before that anniversary.
Well, you're exactly right. I mean, here we are just 3 days before the 18th anniversary. So where that advice is coming from, it's not clear. You know, secret talks, secret meetings when it comes to peace have a history at Camp David, whether it was with Jimmy Carter in 1978 or with Bill Clinton in 2000. But what we have to look at is the visual of this is extremely bad. The timing was bad, and I think it was a bad move.
Steve?
Don, what would you recommend that Trump do at this point with respect to what's going on in Afghanistan?
Well, sir, my recommendation is, as the president, the deal is dead. There are no more talks until they can come back and say that they are willing to honor their part of the deal. Part of that means having a ceasefire, which they agreed not to do or did not agree to do in exchange for the Taliban prisoners that the U.S. had negotiated on behalf of Kabul.
You just said moments ago that this is not, the Taliban's not a party that wants to negotiate. You have a lot of experience in this field. How could the president invite the Taliban over and expect any type of dialogue when you just said right here, and many people do agree with you, that they don't negotiate?
Well, you know, the president loves his face-to-face meetings, and we know that.
To what purpose, though? This could potentially result even more violence.
Oh, I completely agree, and I think, you know, if there were to be a second meeting or a first meeting, we had the meeting September 1st. With the Taliban, it should have been done in a mutual grant, not in the United States, not at Camp David, and not in a place that gives them a win publicly that they would have used for propaganda years to come. And it would have been a great, you know, recruiting tool for them. You know, what would that have shown, you know?
Because we've invited you to the United States.
You bet.
And
How do you think the military serving us overseas feels when they see this on again, off again?
Well, you know, it's very confusing. The one part of that, when you raise your right hand to serve the country, you always honor the commander-in-chief, whether you agree or disagree. So that's on one hand. But the other hand, and we saw this with President Obama when we had the victory and we started withdrawing in Iraq. And I know personally that when we lost those same towns that I fought for and we were there, you know, it's disheartening and you lose your sense of morale. This would have caused us, this pulling out too early, this withdrawal of troops, would have sent a bad message of wasted time and wasted energy.
Well, that's my question, Don, and thank you once again for your service. But the president we know wants to bring the troops home. Will the war in Afghanistan be ended, or will the war in Afghanistan be won? And how should the president do it either way?
Well, this president has said from the beginning that he wants us out of Afghanistan. He wants us to bring as many troops as we come home. And he's tried to have those plans. But I think in this case, the Taliban has shown they do not want peace. They do not want to recognize the Afghanistan government that we have fought for the last near 2 decades to establish. And, you know, where they've said they want to ensure that there's some freedom still in place, I think this sets it completely wrong, and it's a backwards move for them.
Do you think, well, just this week, it's pretty sensitive few past days, right? And I know you said the timing is probably not the greatest, 9/11 anniversary on Wednesday. There was the anti-Taliban commander, the anniversary of his death today. Tomorrow is a very popular holy day as well. Why do you think they chose, of all weeks, to meet over this past weekend? Well, I know you probably don't know, but I figured it's just weird, the timing.
It is weird. And
I'm going to say stupidity because you can't say it.
No.
Correct. But what I do think is the potential here for the Taliban and every other terrorist group to use this as a recruiting tool stands out. You know, you would see this on their Twitter accounts. They would be using this to recruit.
Are you seeing this already? Have you been looking?
I haven't seen it, and we've been watching, but I think had they got those first couple of images with them and the president, them in the United States, we would have seen that for years, maybe longer to come.
Wow. And we only have a minute left, but I want to ask you briefly that they promised greater attacks. Are American servicemen, are they at greater risk now as a result of the canceled meeting? I mean, is this just idle talk, or is this going to happen?
Well, I think the risk is always there. We have to remain vigilant with this force. But we have a strong force there, and they need to realize that you know, everything comes with a price. So if they want to increase their attacks, well, we've not said what we're going to do in retaliation for this past attack. I think more to come on our side.
All right. Well, thank you for being with us. There is more to come, and we will be covering it all. Thanks again. All right. Moving on.